I know that the Samsung Galaxy S23 series has only been on the market for a little while, but we've already got some rumors beginning to percolate, to bubble to the surface about the upcoming Samsung Galaxy S24 series of phones. In this video, most notably, we're talking about the S24 Ultra. We have an article here from a website called galaxyclub.nl, and they have been quite reliable on the topic of Samsung Galaxy phones. It is sort of their shtick. They cover these sorts of phones. And there's really not a lot here other than the fact that the S24's code name is Project Muse. But there's one more bit of information here. They are reporting that the S24 Ultra does indeed have a telephoto camera with 5x optical zoom. So I want to really quickly talk about what that could mean for the S24 Ultra. So for those that maybe don't know, the S23 Ultra has a 10x telephoto and a 3x telephoto, in addition to, of course, the ultra wide and that primary 200 megapixel sensor. So this rumor here would essentially be implying that we're going to drop the 3x in exchange for a 5x. Now you may hear that and immediately think, well, 5's bigger than 3. This must be good news. And it might very well be good news. However, we do need to dig into this a little bit more because there are a lot of interesting things to think about when you start changing these zoom levels. So, with the current phone, you have a 1x, a 3x, and a 10x. Of course, you can zoom into all places in between, and of course, beyond 10x, all the way up to 100x. That is because there are two different kinds of zoom. There's optical zoom and there's digital zoom. Digital zoom is almost like taking a photo that's already been taken, imagine it like this, and then pinching to zoom in. You're just zooming in digitally after the fact. And then, of course, it uses software to try and touch that up and to make it look better and better. It's not after the fact, of course, it's before the picture is taken. And there's a lot that goes into it. Google does really crazy things where they're using the slight movement of your hand to take photos from slightly different locations, and then it uses those slight differences to clear things up. There's a lot that goes into digital zoom looking as good as it currently does, but it does not look as good as optical zoom, which is using a physical lens to actually zoom in like a telescope or something like a proper camera does. And of course, if you have a 3x optical zoom and you zoom in further than that, it's hybrid. It's using a bit of optical and a bit of digital. Now, to help explain this, I've created a couple of very crude diagrams that can kind of explain how I think things are potentially going to work. These are probably a bit exaggerated. So this is the current setup, a 1x, a 3x, and a 10x. So from 1 up until, let's call it 2.999x zoom, you're using the 1x camera. It's just digitally zooming in. So you may notice on your S23 Ultra that as you're pinching to zoom in, those photos at 1x look great. 2x looks great. But that gap between 2 and 3, it starts to degrade a little bit right until you hit 3, and then it flips to that 3x, and then it looks really good again. Now from 3x to 4x, we're going back to hybrid. 5x, even 6x, I think looks pretty good, but let's be honest, that gap between 6 and the moment that the 10x kicks in, 9.999, it doesn't look very good, and that is a pretty large band of not so good zoom performance. Now, of course, we're now using a 200 megapixel sensor on the S23 Ultra. It's extraordinarily high resolution. So in theory, and actually in practice, Samsung is now using that extra resolution to be able to digitally zoom in a little bit better. So this is what I think they're hoping for with this change to the 5x. Now we're going to be going from 1x to 4.9999, repeating, using that primary sensor, that 200 megapixel sensor. And I think that they're hoping that 200 megapixel sensor is going to be able to hold on and look pretty good all the way up to when that 5x kicks in. Personally, I think it'll do okay from 1, 2, and 3, but that 4x, you're really pushing that digital zoom. Even with the 200 megapixel sensor, you're pushing it pretty far. I'm skeptical that that 4x area is going to look very good, but then that 5x kicks in. And I think that we've seen on devices like the Pixel 7 Pro that have a 5x optical zoom, but of course can zoom further, all the way up to 10x. Looks really quite good on that. So 5X probably all the way up until that 10X kicks in is probably going to look good. So the new setup might only struggle in that 3, 4, almost 5 range, maybe just that 4X range, whereas the old setup would struggle really from probably, if I'm being honest, 6, 7, 8, 9, that whole band. It's a larger, wider band of not very good. So I think that's what they're hoping for. You swap out the 3 for the 5, you use the 200 megapixel, much higher resolution to go from 1 up until that 5, and theoretically from 1 to 10, you're pretty solid through that entire band of zoom levels. Now, how will that actually work in practice? All of that remains to be seen. Of course, it also remains to be seen if that's actually what's even going to happen, because these are very, very early rumors at this moment. It's simply more fun than anything just to kind of think about this and hypothesize about how this might work. Of course, you're going to want to be subscribed to this channel as more of these rumors do break. I'm going to be breaking these things down further and talking through them. I'll drop a link to this article. It's very brief. You pretty much saw all of it on this video, but I'll drop a link to it in the comments and description down below. Guys, like I said, subscribe for more. I'll see you on the next one. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.